Hey everyone, welcome to my waiting room. There's something oddly quiet about the moment before everything changes. The sun that morning wasn't any different. The tea I made tasted the same. I even smiled at my reflection, thinking I looked, dare I say, okay. But life doesn't knock first. It started with the pillow. I remember waking up and noticing tiny strands, maybe 10 or 15, scattered like whispers across the cotton. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was from stress. Maybe it was normal. Maybe nothing was happening at all. But it wasn't nothing. A few days later, more hair clung to my comb. My shower drain began catching the truth I didn't want to face. I ran my fingers through my hair one morning and watched a handful fall softly into the sink. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I sat down on the cold bathroom floor, legs folded beneath me, and just stared. It was like watching the beginning of a goodbye. Quiet. Slow. I thought I had made peace with this part. I'd read all the brochures, watched the inspiring videos, told myself hair is just hair. But when it's your hair, your past, your confidence, your identity wrapped strand by strand into memories, it's not just anything. It's you, and watching pieces of me drift away in silence. It made the bathroom feel like a battlefield. I didn't want to fight that day. I wanted to hide. From mirrors, from sympathy, from the version of me that still thought I could outrun this. I wrapped my head in an old scarf I found in my closet. Not stylish, just soft, just safe. I went to the kitchen and made toast like nothing had changed. But everything had. The mirror in the hallway caught me as I passed. I paused. My eyes met my own reflection half covered in fabric and whispered to myself, if you want to keep living, you'd better listen to the whole story. Please like and subscribe to follow me every day as I share this messy, fragile, sometimes funny, sometimes devastating journey. And if you're here, drop your city and time zone in the comments. Tell me what today looks like where you are. Now let me tell you my story. It just might be the motivation we both need to keep going. Because that day was the start of everything. Not just the hair, not just the fear, but the real work of finding out who I was without the pieces I'd clung to for so long. And strangely, in losing what I thought made me whole, I began to become something stronger. It didn't take long before the decision made itself. I stood in front of the mirror again the next morning. This time I held the electric razor in my right hand like it was some kind of ancient weapon. My left hand trembled slightly as it reached up to touch the thinning patches on my head. There were bald spots now, honest, raw, undeniable, and I was tired of pretending. There's something oddly empowering about claiming what's already being taken from you. That razor wasn't an act of defeat. It was an act of ownership. I wasn't going to sit around and watch my hair fall out in clumps like I was the background character in my own life. I was going to take it all off, on my terms. So I breathed, sat down on the edge of the tub, clicked the switch, the buzzing filled the silence, and I began. Each pass over my scalp made a sound I'll never forget. A sort of whispering hum. With every strip of hair that fell into the sink, I felt something else leave to fear, vanity, denial. I expected to cry. Instead, I started laughing halfway through. There was something so ridiculous, so surreal about seeing myself slowly transform into a new person in real time. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't poetic. It was awkward and patchy and full of tiny cuts from bad angles, but it was mine. When I finally turned the razor off, I just sat there. No hair, no filter, no hiding. I looked in the mirror and, well, I didn't recognize myself. Not exactly, but I didn't hate what I saw either. I saw someone who looked brave more than I'd ever admitted before. I saw a survivor in progress, a woman who didn't wait for permission to let go. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian women voluntarily shaved their heads for spiritual purity or were forced by ritual law. I'm not Egyptian and I'm not holy. But that day I felt clean in a way I hadn't in months. It wasn't about hair anymore. It was about power. Later that night, I took a picture. No wig, no scarf, just me lit only by a single bedside lamp staring straight into the camera. I didn't post it. I didn't even show anyone. But I kept it. I needed to remember what I looked like when I stopped pretending. When I lay down to sleep, I felt the pillowcase against my bare scalp. Cool, unfamiliar, oddly comforting. I'd started the day afraid of losing something. I ended it having found something else entirely. Myself. The next morning, I woke up and almost forgot I was bald. It was one of those fleeting, sleepy moments where your brain hasn't caught up with your body yet. I stretched, yawned, and rolled over, and then the fabric of the pillowcase whispered against my scalp in a way that reminded me things were different now. I sat up, walked to the mirror again, and studied myself under the harsh light of the bathroom. There was no more hiding behind loose hair or artful styling, no distractions, just me, just this version of me. And strangely, she looked honest. I stared at that reflection longer than usual, ran a hand over my head. It felt like velvet, soft and unfinished. I tilted my head this way and that, noticing the shape of my skull, the curve of my jaw, the way my eyebrows looked more dramatic without the frame of hair. It wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense, but it was powerful and somehow calming. Later that day, I went to the grocery store. I hesitated before stepping outside. For the first time, I wasn't wearing a wig or a scarf, just a loose hoodie, some jeans, and my bare head. I could have covered up. I even had a beanie in my bag just in case panic kicked in, but I didn't use it. The world didn't stop when I stepped outside. No dramatic stares, no whispers. Yeah. Well, okay, maybe one double take from a teenager by the apples, but that was it. Most people just went on with their day, and I went on with mine. Still, every time I caught my reflection in a store window or the metal of a freezer door, I had to do a double take. That's me. That's actually me. There was a woman behind me in line at checkout who smiled kindly and said, "You're brave." I smiled back and shrugged. "I'm just trying to get oranges." We both laughed. Historians still argue whether ancient warriors shaved their heads for battle or simply to keep lice away. But standing there, groceries in hand, I felt like I'd suited up for something far greater than war. I had stepped into a new kind of fight, the one where you learn to show up exactly as you are. I walked home in the late afternoon light, the wind brushing across my scalp like a greeting. I'd forgotten what fresh air felt like without a barrier. It was like breathing through my skin. Back at home, I sat on the balcony, drank tea, and watched the sun dip down. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt not just present, but seen. Not by others, by myself. And that felt like a kind of victory I hadn't known I was chasing. There's a strange kind of freedom in no longer being able to hide. It creeps up on you, slowly, softly, like light seeping under a locked door. After that trip to the grocery store, I started venturing out more. No scarves, no beanies. Just me and my shiny little skull catching reflections in shop windows and passing cars. At first, I kept my head down instinctively. Decades of social training doesn't disappear overnight. But after a few days of people not pointing, not laughing, not treating me like a public spectacle, I lifted my chin. And when I did, I caught eyes with a little girl on the train. She looked at me wide-eyed and curious, then whispered something to her mom. Her mom leaned down, glanced my way, and said something quietly in return. Then the girl waved at me, so I waved back. Her mom smiled. That was it, but it felt like enough. That night, I looked in the mirror again. Not for inspection this time, just to look. And for the first time in months, I noticed my collarbones, my eyes, the freckles I used to be self-conscious about. I was seeing me, not just the cancer. I took another picture. This one with the city lights glowing behind me through the apartment window. I didn't stage it or filter it. I just smiled and clicked. Then I posted it. No dramatic caption, just still me. The responses were kind, some funny, some emotional. A friend from high school messaged me, "I shaved my head in solidarity today. Didn't look half as good as you." Another stranger commented, "I needed this, thank you." And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was witnessing myself, allowing others to see what strength looked like when it wasn't polished or perfect, when it was raw and bald and breathing. Historians still argue whether Joan of Arc cut her hair as an act of rebellion and religious purity or simply military practicality. But whatever the reason, the act became legend. And while I'm no saint or soldier, I understand now why someone might stand up straighter once the hair's gone. You feel everything more. The cold, the wind, the way your pillowcase feels at night. But also the sun, the heat of someone's hand on your neck, the sensation of life pressing against your skin. You realize you've been numb for a while. Losing my hair peeled back more than just a layer of me. It took away the illusion that I could be untouched, unaffected, unseen. Now, when I step outside, I do it fully. People may stare, or they may not, but I no longer walk like I'm shrinking. I walk like I'm exactly who I am. And that feels like something I never expected liberation. Finding the right headscarf was harder than I thought. Not because there weren't enough options, there were too many. Silk cotton jersey, floral solid sequins, turbans with bows, wraps with tails, pre-tied ones with built-in volume. It was like stepping into a secret fashion universe I never knew existed. I spent 2 hours online scrolling through headwear like a teenager shopping for prom. I added 8 scarves to my cart deleted, 5 added 3 more, then closed the tab in a burst of indecision. It wasn't just fabric, it was identity. Eventually, I wandered into a local boutique. The woman behind the counter, older kind, eyes short silver bob, gave me that look. Not the pitying one. The "I've been there too" one. She didn't ask if I had cancer, she just said cotton's best for summer. Try this one. It was deep green, soft, breathable. When I wrapped it around my head in front of the boutique mirror, I blinked. For a second, I looked elegant. Not like I was hiding, not like I was sick, but like I'd chosen it. She nodded behind me. That color suits you. I bought 3 more. At home, I turned my bedroom into a makeshift runway. I tried each scarf, each style, loose wrap tight, twist knotted side bun. I laughed when I tied one backward and looked like a pirate. I paused when another made me look like my grandmother in her wedding photos. And somewhere between outfit 4 and 5, something shifted. This wasn't about covering up anymore. This was about discovering a new canvas. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra used her elaborate headdresses to signal divine power or to distract from political maneuverings. Either way, she understood what women like me were rediscovering. Now, adornment can be armor. One scarf made me feel mysterious, another bold. There was even a pink floral one that made me want to twirl in the hallway just to feel it sway. They weren't disguises, they were declarations. And on days when I didn't feel like being brave, I had one soft blue wrap I called my invisibility cloak. It let me blend in just enough to get through a doctor's appointment or ride the elevator without eye contact. But even then, I was choosing. That's what no one tells you about hair loss. It's not just the absence of hair, it's the sudden, relentless need to redefine how you move through the world. Before cancer, I used to spend 20 minutes curling my hair for parties. Now I could get ready in 5 and still look like I meant it. There's freedom in that too. And power. So yeah, some mornings I go bald and bold. Other days I wrap my head in color. But every day now, I look in the mirror and see someone who decided not to disappear. There was a moment at the coffee shop that changed something in me. I was sitting at my usual table by the window, the one with the wobbly chair and the best view of the passing street, when a little girl pointed at me from across the room. Her eyes were wide, full of innocent curiosity. Mommy, why doesn't she have hair? The entire place paused for a breath. You could feel the adult tension, the silent plead for that child to lower her voice to not make things awkward. Her mom hushed her, quickly whispering something too soft to hear. But I smiled and waved. It's okay, I said, just loud enough. I'm fighting something, and the medicine made my hair go away. The girl blinked, then said, Oh, you look cool. Cool. That one word knocked the air out of me in the best way. Not sick, not poor lady. Not what happened to her. Just cool. I laughed genuinely. So did her mom. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. Children don't carry the fear we do. They just see. They ask, they wonder, they adapt. It's the adults who get uncomfortable. I stirred my coffee slowly and stared at my reflection in the window. Bald head, bold earrings, a splash of lipstick that had survived 2 sips. Yeah, maybe I was cool. It reminded me of something I read once. Historians still argue whether the Amazons of Greek mythology truly existed or were inspired by real warrior tribes of Scythian women who reportedly shaved their heads and fought alongside men. Myth or not, the idea stuck with me: fierce women, bald and strong, unapologetic. I finished my drink and stood a little straighter that day. Later, I called my friend Maya and told her about the girl in the cafe. You're like Vin Diesel in a sundress, she joked. We both laughed until we couldn't breathe. Because yeah, some days I'm weepy and exhausted and miss my old reflection. But other days I show up bald head, gleaming eyeliner sharp, and make strangers smile. It's not always about being strong. Sometimes it's just about showing up anyway. And on that day in the coffee shop, I didn't just feel seen. I felt accepted, maybe even admired. And that feeling, that's stronger than any hair I ever lost. The first time I tried on a wig, I cried. Not for the reasons you'd think. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even vanity. It was something closer to disorientation, like looking in a mirror and seeing a version of yourself that used to exist, but now felt like a dream you couldn't quite remember. The woman at the wig boutique was patient. She'd clearly done this before. Her hands were gentle, her voice calm. You can take your time, she said. We don't rush here. I tried on a shoulder-length one, first dark brown like my old hair used to be, then a pixie cut, then a blunt bob with caramel highlights. Each time I looked at my reflection like I was meeting a new cousin at a family reunion. Familiar, but not quite me. Then she handed me one that was completely different, platinum blonde, short, messy. I laughed. I've never been blonde in my life. Try it, she said. So I did. And somehow it worked. Not because it made me look like my old self, it didn't. It made me look like someone entirely new. Someone with attitude, someone who might ride a motorcycle or get into bar fights over poetry, someone who didn't apologize. I bought it, and I named her Claudia. Yes, I named my wig. Claudia became my alter ego. On days when I needed armor, I wore her out and walked like I ruled the sidewalk. On other days, she sat patiently on her mannequin stand while I went bareheaded and brave. The truth is, it wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about giving myself the freedom to explore who else I might be now. Because that's what cancer does. It doesn't just strip you down. It asks you to rebuild. Historians still argue whether Marie Antoinette's famously elaborate wigs were symbols of rebellion delusion or desperate attempts to control her public image in a collapsing monarchy. Whatever the reason, wigs have always carried more than hair. They carry identity, expression, power, and sometimes even healing. That day, as I walked home with Claudia in a box under my arm, I realized I wasn't chasing who I used to be. I was collecting pieces of who I might become. Each scarf, each smile, each choice, even wigs, was a way of claiming something back. Some people find strength in silence. I found mine in blonde bangs and eyeliner. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Chemo brain is real. I used to think it was just a funny phrase, like mom brain or senior moment. But then I found myself standing in the kitchen holding the TV remote trying to microwave my tea. Not once, not twice, 3 times. It's like your thoughts turn into fog. Thick, slow-moving fog that won't let you finish sentences or remember why you opened the fridge in the first place. I was in the middle of a conversation with my sister one day, something simple like what to order for lunch, and I just stopped. What was I saying, I asked. She smiled gently. We were talking about sushi. Sushi, I blinked. Was I hungry? She laughed. You were halfway through listing your top 3 rolls. Oh, right. Salmon avocado, spicy tuna. What was the third one? She paused. You were still deciding. We laughed. But later that night, I cried. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It was the reminder that cancer doesn't just live in your body, it moves into your mind, too. It makes a home in your memory, your language, your focus. Some days I felt like I was losing parts of myself, one brain cell at a time. Historians still argue whether Leonardo da Vinci's scattered notebooks were evidence of genius or neurological disorder. Maybe both. Maybe brilliance and brokenness share the same room sometimes. I started writing things down, post-it notes on the mirror grocery list for even the simplest errands, reminders on my phone to drink water, to stretch, to breathe. Literal reminders to breathe. I created rituals to anchor myself. Morning coffee with the same mug, lavender lotion before bed, classical piano during showers. And when I couldn't find my words, I stopped apologizing. I just smiled and said, chemo brain, be kind. Most people understood. The rest weren't my people. One evening, I forgot how to spell my own last name on a hospital form. I laughed at first, then froze, then panicked. The nurse looked at me calmly and said, We've got you, take your time. So I did, and the name came back. I wasn't disappearing. I was learning to navigate a slower world. I used to pride myself on multitasking. Now I found joy in doing one thing at a time. Slowly, intentionally, and maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's a gift in disguise. Because when you're forced to move slower, you see things others miss, like how the light hits the wall at 4:17 p.m. Or how your cat only purrs when you hum Coldplay. Life didn't need me to be sharp, it just needed me to show up. Fog and all, grief has layers no one warns you about. I thought I understood sadness. I thought I could map it out: diagnosis, shock, tears, healing. But it doesn't move in straight lines. It loops. It stings when you least expect it. One afternoon, I was folding laundry, the most ordinary thing in the world, when I found one of my old pillowcases. It still had a few strands of my real hair tucked in the seams. I sat on the floor and cried. Quietly. Without drama. The kind of cry that feels like gravity, not loud, not violent, just heavy. It wasn't about the hair. It was about the girl who used to lie on that pillow dreaming she had time. Dreaming she had forever. That day, I didn't finish the laundry. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, letting my thoughts stretch out. I let myself feel the loss, not just of hair, but of who I used to be, who I was before. Grief isn't just for the dead. Sometimes it's for the pieces of you that don't make it through. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians' rituals of mourning, including shaving their heads and covering themselves in ash, were symbolic acts of purity or emotional expression. Either way, they understood that loss needs a ritual, a rhythm, a container. So I made one for myself. I lit a candle that night, wrote a letter to my old self. I told her everything: how scared I was, how brave she'd been, how we missed her, but also how we were okay now. Then I tore it up and let the pieces scatter into the sink like confetti. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't even closure, but it was something. Grief doesn't leave all at once. It visits, unannounced. Sometimes at 2 a.m., sometimes in the pasta aisle, sometimes in the middle of a Taylor Swift song. And you learn not to fight it. You let it in, offer it tea, let it cry, then thank it for stopping by. Because every time it shows up, it takes a little more weight with it when it leaves. I'm learning that healing isn't about returning to who I was. It's about becoming someone new, someone softer, slower, wiser. And the only way forward is through. Chemo days became their own strange routine. I'd wake up early, pack a bag like I was going to a weird spa, a blanket, headphones, lemon, drops a notebook I barely wrote in. Sometimes a book I didn't read. Sometimes just silence. The hospital room was cold, always cold, not dramatic. Winter cold, just sterile metallic cold that seeped into your fingertips. I wrapped myself in that same gray blanket every time, wore the same hoodie, same fuzzy socks with the little stars. The nurses got to know me. Hey, superstar, one would say, wheeling over the IV pole. Back for your cocktail, another would wink. It was bizarre how normal it all became. Drip, drip, drip. The medicine entered my veins slowly, like a quiet battle being fought beneath the surface. It didn't hurt. Not really, but I could feel it like gravity was being rewritten from the inside out. I'd sit there listening to soft music or watching clouds pass through the hospital window. People think chemo is dramatic, loud, violent. Sometimes it is, but mostly it's stillness. Just waiting. Historians still argue whether Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, believed in balancing the four bodily humors to treat cancer, or simply didn't know what else to do. Either way, sitting there, I understood the ancient feeling of trusting something you don't fully understand. There were moments I felt like a warrior, and others I felt like a lab rat. Once a nurse spilled a tiny bit of the chemo fluid on the floor and had to call in a hazmat team to clean it. That's when it really hit me. This is so toxic. People need gloves to touch it, and it's inside my body now. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I'd panic. Humor became my best medicine. Every chemo day, I'd try to make someone laugh: a nurse, a fellow patient, the guy delivering sandwiches. Not because I was brave, but because I needed it too. There was an old man across from me once who told me I looked like Sinead O'Connor. I told him he looked like Mr. Clean. We high-fived with our IV hands. That's what no one tells you about cancer rooms. They're full of kindness and sarcasm and strange, beautiful hope. I started keeping a chemo playlist, not sad songs, not fight songs, just songs that made me feel alive. One time I played Beyoncé under my breath and lip-synced the entire verse while the IV dripped. Even the doctor danced a little. Because even in the middle of poison, you can still find rhythm. Still find you. People stopped asking how I was doing. At first, there were messages every day, check-ins, meal offers. Thinking of you texts and little gifts left at the door. The kind that made you feel like you were floating in a warm, well-lit orbit of love. Then slowly the text came every few days, then once a week. Then, silence. I don't blame anyone. Life moves on. People have jobs, birthdays, breakups, their own worries. And cancer, especially when it stretches into months, becomes just another background story. But to me, it was still everything. One day, I stared at my phone and realized I hadn't spoken out loud in almost 36 hours. Not to a friend, not to a barista, not even to myself. It was eerie. So I said something just to break the silence. Hey, still here? And then I cried. Not out of sadness, not even loneliness really, just the strange grief of being forgotten while still alive. Historians still argue whether Emily Dickinson's seclusion was due to illness, social anxiety, or an intentional spiritual retreat. But sitting in my room, with the blinds half drawn, I understood her in a way I never had before. There's a kind of solitude that isn't chosen, and it teaches you what kind is. So I began to build my own rhythm, my own voice. I started journaling, not deep thoughts, just fragments. Today I felt cold for no reason. My tea tastes like hope. My cat loves me more than my mirror does. I am not my scalp. Eventually, I started sending letters. Real ones, stamped and everything. Some people wrote back, others didn't. That was okay. Because I wasn't writing for replies. I was writing to remind myself that I still existed beyond these four walls. I even started talking to the plants on my windowsill, named them, watered them, gave them pep talks. One of them, a stubborn little succulent, bloomed unexpectedly, and I took that as a sign. Not that everything would be okay, but that something was still growing quietly, stubbornly right beside me. And that was enough. My body began to speak a new language. At first, it whispered a little fatigue here, a touch of nausea there. Manageable, familiar even. But as the weeks wore on, the whispers became shouts. My joints ached like I'd aged 40 years overnight. My skin thinned. My taste buds mutinied. Water began to taste like metal. My favorite chocolate made me gag. I couldn't stomach coffee, and that hurt more than the chemo. One day I looked down at my hands and didn't recognize them. Pale, dry, a little shaky. I remember joking to myself, congratulations, you've unlocked old lady mode, level grandma. But inside it wasn't funny. I missed me the me who could run upstairs, who didn't need 3 naps after a shower, who could stand in the grocery store without scanning for the nearest bench. I tried yoga, that lasted 4 poses. I tried walking in the park, that lasted 3 benches. But I kept trying. Historians still argue whether Roman gladiators were given special diets to heal faster, or simply treated like livestock to be recycled into the next fight. Either way, survival was tied to strength. And for the first time in my life, I understood how unfair that measurement could be. I didn't feel strong. I felt like glass. Still, there were moments. Small ones. A morning, I brushed my teeth without gagging. A night, I slept 6 hours without waking. The way I learned to balance my nausea with a perfectly timed cracker before pills. Those became victories. And slowly, I started to redefine strength. Not in push-ups, not in pain tolerance, but in presence. Strength was showing up to my doctor's appointment even though I was afraid. Strength was making my own tea when my hands shook. Strength was answering, I'm doing okay, even if I wasn't, because it helped someone else feel better too. I stopped seeing my body as broken. It wasn't failing me, it was fighting for me. Every bruise, every scar, every tremble, they weren't weaknesses. They were evidence of battle, and I was still here. Even if I had to whisper it, I started noticing beauty in the ugliest places. Like the way the light hit the peeling paint in the hospital hallway soft and golden as if it were trying to apologize. Or how the IV poles made quiet metallic music when the nurses wheeled them too fast around corners. Or the absurd delight of finding a vending machine that still had the good granola bars. Beauty became something I had to search for, make room for, because if I didn't, I'd drown in the grayness. There was this one day I remember it clearly when it rained for hours. Not a heavy storm, just that gentle, insistent drizzle that wraps the whole world in a whisper. I stood under it, bald head, bare arms wide, like some cliche character in a dramatic movie. And you know what? It didn't feel dramatic. It felt true. The water touched my scalp like a benediction. Cold, honest, healing. I whispered, I'm still here to the rain, and it didn't laugh. It just kept falling. Historians still argue whether Japanese haiku became popular during times of war because they helped writers distill emotion into something manageable or whether it was simply a cultural shift in expression. Either way, I started writing my own. No hair, no makeup yet. The mirror smiles at me. Boldness tastes like tea. And I taped them to my fridge, my wall, even the bathroom mirror. My home became a gallery of whispered courage. I took photos of strange things, the way my slippers leaned against each other, the slow curl of steam from my morning mug, the smudge of sunlight on the carpet that looked like a footprint from heaven. Beauty wasn't where I expected it. It didn't come from lipstick or angles or hair. It came from noticing, from deciding that even this limp noodle of a body, this war zone of a face, even this deserved to be seen with softness. Once I caught my reflection by accident, and instead of flinching, I nodded. Hi, I said softly. You made it through today. And for that moment, that small sacred moment, I felt radiant. The mirror stopped being my enemy. For months, I avoided it. Glimpses were enough, a passing glance in a window, a brief check for spinach in my teeth. But full-on eye contact. No, thank you. I knew what I'd see, hollow-cheeked skin like paper, dark moons under my eyes. No eyebrows, no lashes. My face looked like it had been rubbed out and redrawn in pencil. But one morning, I caught myself off guard. I was brushing my teeth and looked up, not on purpose, just looked. And I didn't flinch. There I was. Raw, real, unedited. And something inside me is softened. Because I wasn't a monster. I wasn't broken. I wasn't sick-looking. I was alive. I whispered, hey, you, and smiled, not out of vanity, but out of respect. That face had cried, laughed, prayed, screamed, and endured more in 1 year than I ever thought possible. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's famous beauty was a matter of appearance or power, whether it was her charisma and intellect that truly captivated the world. I started to think maybe beauty was never about perfection. Maybe it was about presence. So I reclaimed the mirror. I stood in front of it for 10 full minutes each morning, even if I didn't like what I saw. I'd name what I was proud of. These eyes have seen survival. This mouth still says thank you. This neck still holds my head high. This chest still breathes. It became a ritual, not of vanity, but of truth. And eventually I started playing with scarves like they were crowns. Each one wrapped around my head was a statement, yes, I'm bald, and yes, I'm still me. Some days I wore hoops, big ones, the kind that say I didn't come here to disappear. And I didn't. I came to live, one reflection at a time. The final treatment came without fireworks. No triumphant music, no epic speeches. Just the soft beep of a finished IV bag, the quiet clap of a nurse who'd seen hundreds of these days, and a sticker that said, you did it in glittery letters. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, like a balloon after the party's over. But when they handed me that tiny bell, the one patients ring at the end of chemo, my fingers trembled. For a moment, I almost didn't do it. Because what does it mean to finish something that still lives inside you? But I rang it anyway. The sound was small, not theatrical. Just a clean, crisp chime that echoed off the hallway tiles. I closed my eyes and let it wrap around me. That sound said, You made it. You're still here. And even if it's not over, this chapter is. Historians still argue whether medieval knights returned from battle proud or haunted, whether the silence afterward was peace or something heavier. I get that now. There's a strange grief in surviving. No more appointments on Thursdays. No more excuses to cancel things. No more safety net of I have chemo. Now it's just me, hairless, healing, whole but changed. I walked out of the hospital slower than I walked in. Not because I was weak, but because I knew I'd never be the same. The sunlight hit differently that day. I got into my car, rolled down the window, turned up the music. Something cheesy, something with lyrics like, I'm a survivor because irony is still my love language. And I cried the whole way home. But it wasn't sadness, it was something messier, fuller, deeper. Relief, fear, pride, loneliness, awe, all stirred together in a body that had been through hell and still woke up the next day. That night I wrote in my journal, I don't know who I'll become from here, but I like her already. And I slept with the bell on my nightstand, not as a trophy, but as a promise. A quiet reminder that I'm not done. I'm just beginning again. Let's slow down now. Close your eyes or keep them open, soft and unfocused. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench. Picture yourself in a quiet place. Maybe it's your room, maybe it's a garden, maybe it's somewhere no one else has ever seen. You're sitting there, wrapped in something warm. A breeze moves gently around you, and for the first time in a long time, you're not waiting for bad news. You're just being. The past year has carved something new in you. Not emptiness, not damage, but depth. You carry stories now, ones that ache, yes, but also shimmer. You've discovered softness inside your strength, laughter inside your pain, and a future that doesn't look like anyone else's but still belongs to you. So tonight, rest. Let your heart loosen its grip. Let the quiet hold you. And when you wake up tomorrow, remind yourself you're still here, and that is everything. End of script. See you again tomorrow.